Alright, what up everybody, Colt Nerdy Core, back out with another video. This is the continuation of my top 100 games of all time. This will be number 20 to 11. This one I've been kind of debating back and forth if I should continue with the exact same formula I had before or switch it up a bit. So that's why it's kind of taken a little longer. I kind of gone back to the drawing board a couple times with it, but I finally settled up on kind of how I want to deliver this one. So I really wanted to spend a little more time touching on the games themselves, and more so specifically with some of the nostalgia factors and stories and kind of the reasoning why, besides just the game themselves, they make this list for me. So for each game, I'm going to specifically first talk about the game itself, what the game does well, just how good the game is in general, and what my favorite parts are, game modes, all that stuff. And after the second half, for each game, depending on if it has some nostalgia factor for me, some of these are just great games, that's why they make these lists. But the ones that have nostalgia factors for me, or like stories behind them, those will become after I talk about the game itself. So if you just want to see me talking about the game specifically, just skip to each of the timestamps right at the beginning, and it should be able to section it off well for you. I just want to get that out of the way. Thanks again for following the series if you've enjoyed it, and let's just get right into it. Alright, so this is one of those games that definitely, it's a good game, but a lot relies on the nostalgia factor for me, and that is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So for those of you who don't know about these games for some random bizarre reason, they're basically first-person shooter games that dominated the market back in like mid-2000s, 2010s. It was Halo and this. Those were the top of the piles. If you had an Xbox, you played Halo or COD. If you had a PS3, you played COD. That's basically how it worked. I know a lot of people probably rolling their eyes that this makes the top 20 games of all time for somebody who's played as many games as I have. But the reason for this is, one, I'm a huge FPS fan. I love SPS. And I think Call of Duty has always done it really well in terms of the gunplay. I think anything past Call of Duty 3, I would say, the gunplay is just fantastic, and to me some of the best feeling gunplay I think in the genre itself. And for me, this represents the pinnacle of Call of Duty. To the game itself, it's broken up into 3 sections. So first you have the campaign. The campaign in this game is actually pretty good, and it follows kind of the same formulas as most Call of Duty campaigns, where it just has good gunplay. You go through stages with a kind of interconnecting story, kind of switching between perspectives of different characters throughout different parts of the war, and you go through these different missions where there's a variety of some sort of vehicle sections, there's stealth missions, and there's the regular running gun type missions. Why I think this campaign stands out is, for Call of Duty, for me, the campaigns that stand out the most is one that have recognizable and replayable missions that, when I think back on all the Call of Duties that I've played, which is all of them besides the first 2 and the newest one, so I've played all the campaigns of all the other ones in between, this one has some of the more memorable moments. Specifically for me, the early missions like Cliffhanger, and the ones near the ends where the story kind of is starting to unravel and the twists and turns are introduced. I think those ones get more gravity to the situation and actually do it really well, cultivating in, I think, one of the better endings to a Call of Duty game. And also this and the original Modern Warfare have great stealth missions with the ghillie sections. Then it has the Spec Ops mode, which in this would be the replacement for zombies. In my opinion, it was actually done really well in this. So basically, you would load up these little challenges that you could play co-op with a friend, which was my favorite part of it. Playing split screen co-op with either like my dad or my brother was a lot of fun. And if you play on the higher difficulties, it's actually a real challenge. So there's a lot of like coordinations and tactics you got to use for them. And they have a variety of different things. So there'd be ones that focus on stealth, one that focus on being loud and just running in and gunning, trying to kill a certain amount of people. There'll be ones where you have to hold down a certain zone. So there was a good variety of them mixed in. There was even the real fun ones, in my opinion, were the ones where you're going down with the snowmobiles and trying to either beat the time trial or do the one where you're actually shooting on the guys going down. Those ones were awesome. And really, it just added that little bit in, like say you got pissed off at multiplayer, or you just wanted to hop on for a bit, or if you had a friend over and you were done switching controllers in multiplayer and you wanted to play something together, pop onto these little co-op modes, and it was a blast, honestly, to play. But for me personally, and what a lot of people from this era of gaming specifically will remember about these games, and what the highlight of these games are, is the multiplayer. In my opinion, this game and the original Black Ops are where the Call of Duty multiplayer was at its peak. Tons of fun guns. This game probably has the best map pool, in my opinion. It really made replaying these games online fantastic because you were always loading into a quality made map. The guns were fantastic. Yes, there were some cheesy mechanics, but usually most multiplayers have a way to be cheesy. This was like the one-man army noob tube with danger close, or the heartbeat sensors, or anything like that. But this was the height of the quick scoping era, which was just fun to go around and search and destroy with a couple buddies online and try to go for those crazy kill cams, and everybody's hyping them up and stuff like that. It was just a fun time to be online. For me, I always getting into a fun experience whenever I logged in. Even if I was playing like crap, at least I can enjoy some banter in the lobby or something like that. So it was good fun. And what makes this game special to me beyond that is it's actually the first game that got me into the multiplayer, and is the reason I actually started collecting for the PS3. This is not the first game I owned for the PS3. I owned a couple before, like Killzone 2 and Resistance, and Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriot. The reason this got specifically me into PS3 collecting is that originally me, my dad, and my brother, we all played on a single Xbox 360. So we got the PlayStation 3 that I still use kind of collectively on one of the years for Christmas. And really, once we got it, we got Metal Gear. Me and my dad both played Metal Gear. We loved it. And then that was set aside and done. Everybody kind of glided back to the Xbox for the multiplayer because they already had all these games for it and were playing COD on that with their profiles. So there was just this PS3 sitting there. It had free online, and a couple of my friends actually were playing on the PS3. So this got me into making my account and starting collecting games on the PS3, because basically I just went, well, nobody's using this, so I'm going to take this, plop this in my room. It had Wi-Fi, so I could just pop this sucker in my room and play COD all day and all night in my room, basically. Invite my friends over for sleepovers, play COD, just sitting there in my room. It was freaking awesome. And honestly, one of my favorite games for gaming memories. This is one that a lot of my favorite gaming moments have come from playing this game with my friends. And honestly, this game, like a lot of other gamers at that time, sparked my interest in possibly pursuing YouTube as well, just because of that whole phase, montage, MLG, everybody going for cool clips and stuff like that. That got my interest into YouTube, actually. So it's also partially the reason why I started doing YouTube as well. So a lot of meaning behind this game, and it's actually a really solid game. Although the multiplayer might be probably full of hackers by now, the campaign's still actually worth the playthrough, and the co-op missions, if you can get this for like $10, playing co-op with your friend, couch co-op, I really recommend, honestly. Alright, then coming in at number 19, we got Star Wars Battlefront 2. For those of you who don't know about these games, they're third person, first person. You can kind of switch between whatever field of view you like to use. I prefer third person. Shooter games that are based in the Star Wars universe. The kind of gimmick or main game mode that you're here for is kind of a conquest mode. So they set up a bunch of different kind of points, like in Domination and COD, and you look to capture those points, and then the more points you have compared to the other teams, their reinforcements will go down. You drain their reinforcements all the way, you win the match. That's basically how the gameplay goes. And what I love so much about this game in terms of the combat and the game itself, it's one of those games that really functions well for the universe and genre that it's in. This game really nails big, fun, open battles on some classic Star Wars maps. And it's feeling like having like big battles with like vehicles, Jedis, different types of troops from all these different factions that you love through the Star Wars series. It's just really fun and awesome. The gameplay for this is actually really solid as well. Playing in third person, which is normally what I do, it's solid, fun. There's nice roll mechanics to add a little spice to it. There's 5 to 7 classes. I think it's 7. I think there's 5 generally, and then 2 you can unlock with performing well throughout the game. All the classes play very unique. They all have their unique guns and secondary modes. Each of them have something unique that they can kind of counter. So for example, if you're playing the Sith versus the Republic, most characters are terrible at dealing with the droidekas because they're overpowered and I hate them, but that's a different topic. But if you play the Rocket Trooper, the gun itself is kind of like a EMP rocket launcher, kind of. it's great at dealing with those ones specifically. So there's a little rock, paper, scissors mechanics with the classes, and there's always something for you to try and have fun with on different maps. And each character just feels great. None of them feel like kind of a carbon copy of one with like a little tweaks to them. Each one's very specific pros and cons of playing each, and fun to switch between them. There's also probably what the biggest improvement is of this game from the second game is the addition of playing as the Jedis and the heroes. For me, as a kid, growing up, I was addicted to Star Wars once I first saw The Phantom Menace. I basically, all the games I have that are original, like almost, probably half of them, for the original Xbox, are all Star Wars games. I basically bought up any Star Wars game I could find just to play because I love the universe, the characters, and just the design of everything so much. Being able to play as Obi-Wan, to play as Luke Skywalker, to play as Darth Maul, Count Dooku, and just go around slashing through enemies. There's the duel mode where you can play against specifically other heroes and villains. In terms of Jedis and they're like Jango Fett or Han Solo, you just go around beating the crap out of each other and throwing each other around with force pushes and stuff like that. It's just a ton of fun, and the balance for the Jedis is fantastic. They make you feel powerful compared to the regular troops. You can cut through them like butter, but if the AI or whoever you're facing against plays smart, they can deal with them through grenades. Spacing and vehicles are very good at dealing with Jedi, so there's a good counterplay, and I feel like the balance for them is fantastic. This game also comes with a plethora of modes that are so fun to go through, and you'll really never run out of stuff to do in this game. So you can play through the campaign, which is kind of a little story where you go mission to mission to mission, kind of loosely just tying into the movies, and going through just playing the conquest mode and slight variations across. It's a good way to start getting into the game and learning how to play it more so. Then you have instant action, where you can go through and select all the ones you want to play on each map and select what type of game modes you play. So there's conquest, there's capture the flag, and then they have these special game modes which are a lot of fun. So certain maps will each have their own specific mode. There's one where you play as Ewoks versus the Empire. I think there's one where you play as the Jawas, if I'm not mistaken. And then the best one is the one I've recently mentioned, which is the Heroes vs. Heroes. So that's called Assault. It's on Mos Eisley, my favorite map, so that's also awesome. And basically you could load all these different game modes and all these different maps that you wanted, shove them into a playlist, and just play through them. So that's the best pick up and play. Like, I have 20 minutes, I want to bust out a couple maps. That mode's fantastic for that. Then you got my personal game mode, and the one that whenever I am debating on playing this game or having an itch to go back to this game, the one that always draws me back is the Galactic Conquest. If this game, you cut out literally everything else and only had the Galactic Conquest mode as the only way to play it, this would still rank in this exact spot, or at least be somewhere in my top 50, just because of how much I love the mode. So basically what it is you load up one of the 4 factions. You got Empire, Rebels, Republic, or the Sith, and you basically load into this map, and this map will show you a bunch of different planets. You start out owning some, say you're playing as the Empire versus the Rebels, you would start out owning like 4 or 5 planets, and they would start owning like 8 or 9 or something like that. And you have these ships that you kind of move around on the map like a grid, and you can attack planets, and it's kind of a back and forth turn-based thing where you move your ship. Once you land over a planet that isn't yours, you can choose to attack it, and then if you win that battle, you take it. And it's great because it's like its own little campaign or mini game in itself each time you load up a new one, because you only start out with 1 character unlocked, no special bonuses, and you have to level up through winning battles, level up by unlocking all the different characters. You can unlock different bonuses that will be like one-time bonuses to use in battle. Probably one of the best ones and most fun one is being able to unlock the hero. So say you're playing on Dagobah or something like that, and you're the Rebels, you can unlock Yoda to play. And why this game mode is so addicting is, as I said, it's like a fresh start campaign every single time. It gives you that great feeling of when you win a battle, being able to use those credits to kind of snowball by unlocking new units quicker than the AI, or unlock new bonuses to just keep on going through and capturing all these things. They also introduce space battles, so when your two ships meet, you go into a space battle where you can fly a bunch of different ships. There's like bombers, carriers, and then your normal like TIE fighter, X-Wing type things. You can either choose to play objectively, where you go in, destroy the shields, work on destroying all the main components of the ship, which give you points towards reaching a point threshold that will win you the battle. Or you can choose to just go frag central and basically destroy the shields, fly your ship into their ship, and just sitting there and killing all the pilots, which each kill on a pilot gets you points as well. So Galactic Conquest just gives you such a great range of game modes and different maps to play on, and the added element of kind of the strategy of the turn-based part of it and moving your ships, and you can buy more ships, you can kind of keep a ship on a certain planet that you really don't like playing, or it's a really hard map for your faction, so you keep a ship on it so there's always a space battle on it instead, kind of like a defender point. So there's a little bit of strategy that goes into it, and it's just something I always come back to and find myself enjoying. And the nostalgia factor for me in this one is just remember back when I was younger, playing this game with my brother and my dad, and just enjoying the crap out of it. How I got this game is me and my brother were sitting downstairs playing, I'm pretty sure they're the original Battlefront. Then we went upstairs, and our dad, I'm pretty sure, told us to go down and look in one of the cupboards. We opened the cupboards, and bam, it's just sitting there. So we were like, holy shit, let's go down and play. So basically we sprinted downstairs, loaded this sucker up, and just started plowing through the campaign, the instant action. We were amazed by the hero combat and playing as a Jedi and stuff like that. It was just such a fun game that I've invested so many hours into, and it's just one that when I think back on my time playing the original Xbox as a kid, this is probably close to the first game, or probably is honestly the first game that comes to mind. So that's why it deserves number 19 on my list. Alright, then coming up next, we have another Star Wars game from the exact same era actually, and on the exact same console. And that is Star Wars Republic Commando. For those of you who don't know about this game, it is a first-person shooter based in the Star Wars universe that takes place during Attack of the Clones. And this game actually takes a unique perspective and a unique kind of style compared to any other Star Wars games out there, at least specifically at this time and era. And that is, this is actually a really dark and gritty take on Star Wars. So you play as a squad of 4 elite commandos in the Clone Republic Army. They're known as Delta Squad. And so what you are is basically like an elite detachment that's trained to be basically just brutal killers. And so the game is a single player campaign base. It takes place across like 4 planets, I'm pretty sure. So the planet variety is pretty low, but each planet has a really long story to it and really long like campaign mission. So you get a good amount of value out of this game. And what I mean by it takes a darker and gritty approach is that there's a lot of gore. It's kind of dark in terms of its tones and colors and shades. It's a Star Wars game that feels like it captures the like brutality and conflict and kind of like trench or dirty warfare that happens in war more than other Star Wars games, because all the other ones it's like I take my pretty rocket launcher, I'm flying around, oh we shoot each other, and it's all like lasers and everybody kind of funnily dies, and it's not really touched upon like this is war, this is battle, people are getting brutally killed and stuff like that. This game really touches on that. So how they actually make the squad useful, and it's not just a bunch of AI just kind of following you along like in a Call of Duty campaign or something like that. One of the things that this game does extremely well is its squad mechanics. So basically you are the captain or kind of leader, you do all like the planning and stuff like that, and each of the specific people on your team have a specific speciality. You have your demolition guy, you have the hacker or slicer, and then you have the sniper. And throughout the entire game, which is kind of the main gameplay factor of this game specifically, is you can order around and kind of manage your squad how you want them. So you can find specific spots on the map where there's like a nice cover point. They're kind of prefixed, so it's not like you can tell them to go anywhere, but there'll be these prefixed sniper points. You can tell somebody to go over there. You can tell the other people to stay on you, or you can tell them to stay back or push forward and be aggressive. You can tell people to put charges on stuff. You can target, say there's, I don't know, like 4 droids and then a super battle droid. What super battle droids in this are like these beefy boys that take a lot of shots. You can tell them to focus fire on that. You can do these breach and clear ones where you go to a door, you activate the breach and clear. They'll all stand on like the wall, and then the one person will breach it, the next person will throw in a flash or a grenade, and then you all go in. It's really cool. And just having that control of the squad and making it feeling kind of tactical adds that layer of element to the gameplay that just kind of adds a little more depth. The combat itself is really good. It feels great. The weapons have like some actual feel to them, and the kind of gritty darkness of it really comes in with the combat. So basically your rifle has, I think, 4 or 3 different modes. You have a sniper mode, your regular assault rifle mode, I think there's a shotgun, but basically you can have this melee where you like knife, and if you knife something that isn't a robot, like blood will splatter and stuff like that all over your screen, and your guy like wipes it off. So it's a little more gritty even in the combat sense. For me, actually, how I learned of this game, the original Battlefront had a bunch of demo videos in its extra content for a bunch of different games, and I think the very bottom one was this game. So I watched the trailer on the original Xbox and I was hyped. Like it had some badass music. They were showing all the different like squad mechanics you could do. They showed like all the gory parts of it, and I was like, yeah, that's the Star Wars I want to play right there. So I waited till my parents would allow me to get it because it was a little spooky scary. So me being little Timmy Tots, wasn't allowed to get it off the bat. But the second I was able to, I had my money saved up. I went to the store and I went, here you go, give me the game. So I got it for the original sticker still on here. I think it was like 25 bucks or something like that. But this game's fantastic. I've played through it a couple times. Just enjoy the crap out of it. The music's fantastic in this game. And just the atmosphere and everything is just set up so well. It's such a great take on Star Wars, and honestly is one of my favorite Star Wars games of all time. Alright, so coming in at number 17 is a PS4 game. This is Tony Hawk 1 and 2 Pro Skater. So this is a remaster of the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. It's a remaster in the sense that it has all the original content, but they did add a lot to it. So there's a bunch of new characters, and you can do the multiplayer and a bunch of stuff I'll touch on later. But it's not just a pure one-to-one remaster with just like better graphics. Tony Hawk franchise is a very famous skateboarding franchise. And basically what these games are is a very over-the-top, super arcadey skateboarding game. So these games, you're like flying up these big giant ramps, going down, reverting, doing to a manual, doing these you can get up to like, I've gotten up to like a couple hundred in terms of combo, linking tricks together. You basically jump, rail, jump, rail, jump, rail, jump off a wall, back, rail, 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 jump off, go down, revert, do a bunch of stuff, do flips and stuff like that. You can get these crazy huge combos. And what these games do so well, and why the gameplay is so addictive for these games, is while you're doing those crazy combos, it's such a fluid motion into each of them. It doesn't feel so complex that you are struggling, but it has a nice learning curve. And with the upgrade to the newer consoles, the gameplay feels as smooth as it's ever been, running at the higher frame rate. The gameplay for these is always fun first, realism second. How these games are structured in terms of the actual like campaign, I would say, is basically you load into a map. One of the maps I've been showing is Warehouse. You load in, you have a list of objectives you have. It'll be like, score this amount of points, score this amount of points, do this amount of points in a combo, grind this rail a certain way on the map, find the secret tape, collect, I don't know, this map, for example, is 5 fire hydrants. So basically, you would load in, you have a 2-minute timer, you load in, try to get as much stuff as you can off of that list done, Once you get it down, you can do all of them in like 2 minutes easy. Then you reload, complete the thing, go through your list, unlock a new map, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Then you get to these special maps where there are tournaments. So basically you have 3 heats. You run the same map, trying to get the highest combo, highest score with crashing the least, and it'll get you a score by a group of judges out of 100. You rank yourself compared to the AI, try to get first, you get first, you unlock the next map. So the gameplay and mechanics are very simple in terms of what you're doing with them, but I can't stress this enough, the smoothness and the fun feeling of just doing these badass combos is so addicting in these games, and that's why so many people fell in love with these games as a kid. Cruising these great maps, you're doing these crazy combos while listening to a fantastic soundtrack, by the way. With the addition of this being a newer console game, you have the addition of multiplayer. And so you could load into these multiplayer games. There's a couple of variety of game modes. So basically you'll load into a lobby, mess around for a bit, the game will load, you'll do that specific game mode, go back to the lobby on the same map, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. But being able to compete against online people and not just AI, add that new layer of challenge, and seeing all these insane players that have been playing Tony Hawk for years. Like I would say I'm pretty good at Tony Hawk. I could win my occasional match online. But there's some people that are insane at this game, and it was really cool to see. Really, some of the creativity online with some of the community maps is fantastic. And personally, my favorite thing that they added is they added the challenges and unlocks. So basically, you do these specific challenges to unlock different boards for your characters. They have a bunch of different characters that are kind of new generation skaters that also all have their specific new challenges and new boards to unlock. You can unlock different skins for your characters through challenges, and it just adds that layer of depth to the game and replayability. I've played this game through, I think, with at least 9 or 8 characters by now through both campaigns. So needless to say, I really enjoy this game. Alright, next up we have Batman Arkham Asylum. In my opinion, kind of controversial opinion, I've said it a couple times on the channel, this is my favorite out of the Arkham franchise. If those of you who don't know about these games, these are beat 'em up, puzzle solving, detective games based in the Batman universe. So basically, the story for this game is you play as Batman. You're pushing Joker into Arkham Asylum. You're like, here you go, take him. Then it turns out he was setting up the entire time, and kind of he takes over at Arkham, and then there's a bunch of, this is literally like the first like 5 minutes of the game, so I'm not spoiling really anything. And then he takes over, and you run into all these different characters in the Batman universe, and you're kind of dealing with how to put all these people back and save as many people as possible and kind of restore order to Arkham. The same thing I said about Republic Commando, this game really nails that gritty and dark atmosphere that Batman really thrives in. The texture design, the color palette, and the design of the characters really adds to that like darker comic book vibe, and it's really awesome to play through. Also, the design of a lot of the bad guys and their specific kind of powers or boss fights is fantastic. Specifically for me, the Scarecrow ones are some of my favorite out of the series. The combat is, at this point, legendary. It spawned a lot of different games using this combat. Most notably would be the Spider-Man games, or kind of more so newer Assassin's Creed games. The combat is from this game. It's basically a simple but really stylish and really fun combat. So basically you press square, 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 square. Batman does these crazy looking cool combos where he's beating the crap out of people. You'll see a little like danger meter pop up, and that means you press your counter button, you counter that one, and then you can continue your combos train, knocking out and stunning people. Eventually it gets to the point there's people that have shields where you have to jump over them and then hit them from the back. There's certain ones you have to use this cape to like stun them. So there's a little depth to it, but it's really about having simple, fluent combat mechanics that look really flashy and you feel like a badass doing them, to be honest. It also has this great feature of a blend of stealth in it, where you will load into these certain ones where they have guns. So obviously Batman, he just lands down, it's like, hey, I'm gonna punch the shit out of you. He goes, alright, and then just blows his head off. So basically those ones turn into stealth mechanic ones, where you have to like shoot up and fly on gargoyles, and to kind of wait for one to go underneath you, pull them up and string them up, or certain ones where you're just sneaking by and trying to stealth your way through. It adds that little mix of gameplay. They also have these detective modes where you get into a room and say you're trying to follow somebody's blood trail or some sort of pheromone. You load in, scan around for the thing, find whatever you want, and then you can trail people through the map to find where your next location is. It adds that mix of gameplay that you're not always just running around beating the crap out of people, and that would kind of lose the kind of dark and edgy and gritty factor, because you would just be beating the crap out of everybody and you'd be like, alright, this is fun, but there's not really like that story driving it along. It really adds those different breaks in the combat to really tell the fantastic story that's in this game, and getting in that atmosphere that this game really nails. In my opinion, this is the best story out of any of the Arkham games. I really like the linear design in this one. I feel like this is one game series that kind of forced itself open world and to more like an expansive like open world, where I prefer the linear direction of the first game. Just the constant delivery of interactions with the Joker, Harley, this little story that every time you're walking somewhere, every time you're walking to a new section, you always dealt with cool characters, different story elements, and it's all coming at a really nice pace. And this game's just a ton of fun to go through and explore all these different villains and characters that you really love if you've already been introduced to the Batman franchise beforehand. Honestly, not super much nostalgia besides the fact I played this when I was a lot younger. This is just one of those games that was so good it just made my list. Alright, the next up we have Bioshock. I'm just realizing this video is full of a lot of pseudo horror or gritty style games for some reason. I guess because of my favorite movie genre is horror, it kind of integrates into my gaming preference, I guess. For those of you who don't know about the Bioshock game series, it's basically a first-person shooter that has a mix of your regular gunplay, so you'd have a different variety of different guns, and you would have a variety of spells or powers. They're probably more so powers. So what's fantastic about it is you have one on one hand, one on the other, so you can kind of combo them together to create these fun, unique combos that interact with different weapons or different powers in certain ways. So first, to touch on the combat specifically, it's solid. Honestly, that's the best way to describe it. It's a solid feeling first-person shooter for the platform. It's nothing groundbreaking in terms of the combat itself, but the powers and the guns and the different variety of guns and powers, your limited ammo and limited supply of your mana, or Eve in this game it's called, really makes you think how to approach each combat situation and how to deal with especially some of the harder bosses and enemies you run into later, how to deal with them in a really efficient manner. And it has a great upgrading system where you can kind of create your own little build, and really rewards scavenging and doing all the extra little things you can possibly do in the world, just to get those last upgrades for a weapon you're using, or upgrade to a power that you were just about to max out or something like that. It adds that little extra element of kind of some RPG mechanics for the game. But combat aside, what really carries this game for me and why it ranks so high on my list is the atmosphere and the story. First up, as I said at the beginning, this game is a dark and gritty game. This is a horror first-person shooter. So basically, you are, I forget his name, but a guy who plane crashed, and you end up sinking and submerging to this city known as Rapture. And basically, you end up in this sub, you connect to the city, and you open up into the city. Basically, everybody in the city is insanely crazy. So there's basically everybody has fought over this stuff called Eve or Adam, and basically just turned everybody into these fiend junkies that all they want is Adam, and turn them into like these bunch of different types of abominations that you run into throughout the game. It has a great element of not just forcing like jump scares or something like that. This is one of those games that really, especially early on, brings and slowly introduces the tension and different characters and different types of enemies creepily introduced, having some characters that you interact with that aren't really bad in terms of you fight them, but they kind of are creepy in their own way, without trying to spoil too much. And just the whole world and area so dark and interesting, with all the little voice recorders you can find of all the people beforehand before they went nuts. So usually the enemies or the area that you go into, you'll find a voice recording. Usually that will tie into a boss you just fought, or a enemy that's just right in front of you that you're about to kill, or something to do with the area and the little theme that's going on. So it really adds to the character and story growth in this game really well. It's one of those games where you're interested to figure out what's going on. You're interested every time you turn a corner, every time you enter a new room. You kind of want to explore everything to make sure you don't miss anything that could give you more information or more clues onto what's going on in the entire story or the area of Rapture itself. In my opinion, this also has one of the best endings to any game of all time. I thought this game was fantastic from start to finish in terms of delivering interesting characters, interesting plot points, and it really succeeded at making you wonder what was happening next. And the ending for this game is famous for a reason and is fantastic. So if you haven't played these games, do not spoil yourself on revealing the ending to yourself early or looking it up. This is one game I would highly recommend going in completely blind and just enjoying the atmosphere and the story for what it is. The nostalgia region for me for this game is when I was younger, I was originally a giant baby when it came to horror movies. I was terrified of them as a kid. Like the original Halloween scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, and which is funny compared to now. I am a giant horror buff. I basically, half the movies I watch are horror movies. But this game actually got me into the horror genre. So basically, I was at a friend's house. He bought this game or rented this game. We were playing it on his Xbox, and we only got like part way through it, the early part of the game, and we were sitting there, we were playing, and he was playing some parts and I was playing some parts, and honestly I was scared shitless playing it at the beginning, and didn't, I wanted to look cool, so I was like, oh yeah, this is cool, we're shooting people, it's fun, it was pretty cool. You want to do something else? You want to go play COD or Club Penguin or something like that? Trying to nonchalantly get me away from the game. But later on, I picked it up. Actually, this is a copy from Blockbuster. They had a combo pack. It was like this and some third-party controller that was like silver and black. It was really weird. But I got this game and I was like, alright, it was actually kind of fun what I played, but let's try not to be a giant baby and let's actually get through this game. And just getting into it, enjoying it for what it was, and getting into the creepy atmosphere of it really brought me to start really enjoying the horror genre and getting into these creepy, scary games and movies. This was kind of my icebreaker into all of that. Alright, so comment number 14 is NFL Street Football 2. For those of you who don't know about these games, these are arcadey football games that take place on the original Xbox, PS2, and GameCube. There's 3 in the series total. This is the second one that I personally think is the best one. I own the third one, haven't played it yet, so I can't fully judge that this is the best one out of all of them. But out of the first and second one, this one's a big improvement on the first game. For those of you who haven't heard too much about these games, it's a super arcadey, really over the top version of a football game. So think Madden, but you're playing, I think it's 10 on 10, and you have the ability to like run on walls. You can like hurdle over people. You can do like crazy spin moves. You can do like style taunt moves and do these big behind the back throws. They'll gain you style points throughout the entire thing by playing as flashy as you possibly can. Once you earn a total of, I think it's 100,000 points, you get a thing called a game breaker, and what that is basically on game breaker 1 you gain the power to basically, say you're on offense, if you have the ball, you basically just insta blow over people. You just walk over them like they're paper and everybody folds in front of you and you can run it to the end zone. Or if you're on defense, If you're playing as the guy, the second you hit the guy with the ball, it will fumble automatically and until your team recovers it. Or you can save it for a game breaker too, where basically a play will automatically unfold by video, and you'll do some like crazy thing. You'll like hop over 2 people and like check the ball to some guy who just flipped over like 5 people to get to the end zone. And it basically will just auto score for you almost. And the gameplay for this is a lot of fun. In my opinion, I play a lot of sports games. Arcade sports games are one of my favorite genres of all time. This game probably has the best feeling football mechanics out of any football game I've played. It's one I always go back to. Apart from also having great gameplay, it has a lot of modes that actually has a ton of content in it. So first off, you have an Own the City mode where you make your one character, like you create a character, and you basically go through a bunch of different challenges, snagging players from these like pickup games to create a roster. Then you would play these little tournaments versus different teams. You win the tournaments, you gain credits to upgrade your player, your one player. Then you go to a slightly better area, you get better players for your team, pick and choose which positions you want to upgrade. Go through, create your little team, create their jerseys, create their icon, and basically go through, earn your way to challenge. In this game specifically, the boss is Exhibit. For those of you who don't know, he's from Pimp My Ride back in the day. He's also a rapper, the Get Your Walk On. Then you have my personal favorite game mode, which is the NFL Challenge. So basically, you start off from scratch, you make your entire team of all the positions, you can customize them however you want. There's a really deep customization options for a game in this era. There's tons of clothing options, tons of different facial options. You can create their own names all the way through, give them numbers. You can create the team at a bunch of different preset icons, different colors. There's 3 different colors you can pick, like a primary, secondary, and a tertiary one. And then you go into the league. Your team is crap. Your team is terrible, and it feels terrible to play. But you go through doing these little challenges that say, for example, one of the games I'm playing here is not to win the game, but be the first to score 100,000 of the style points. Or you'll have ones where it'll be on a goal line stand, stop the 49ers from getting a touchdown. And then what you earn from that is development points and credits. So the credits are used to clothing or accessories. And then you use the attribute points to level up each individual stat for all your characters on your team. So basically, say, I don't know, I wanted to upgrade my QB. I would load into his thing. You would obviously go for passing, so you level up his passing. Say you want him to be able to run out of the pocket a bit, you would level up his speed and his run power a bit, and you do that for all your different characters. So you have like offensive stats and defensive stats. So there's a lot of different choices and depth you can do to creating a team exactly how you want it to. So my team's usually a run first team, so my running back is nuts. Well, I settle for having not as good stats in other positions. So there's always that replayability of making new teams. And then you can take those teams, go through the gauntlet, which is where you face every single team in the NFL, and then you play the Legends team, which that unlocks you a lot of other attribute points as well to upgrade your team also further. Then even past that, you have custom modes, which is basically you can load into. There's 4 different ones. There's ones where you play just 4-on-4, on 3-on-3, or 2-on-2, which is just like variations of regular football. Then you have Crush the Carrier, which is like 8 people start off. There's 1 ball. You basically run to grab it. The person who has it runs away. The longer they have the ball, the more points they get. And then whoever tackles them also gets points. And you basically go through cycle of people tackling, taking the ball until somebody wins. You have Jump Ball Battle, which is the one I'm showing you now. It's basically you play as one of the wide receivers, and a bunch of balls are thrown, and you basically try to collect as many points as can. Last place by the time limit gets eliminated. This is one plainly nostalgia for me. Is I played the ever-loving crap out of this game when I was younger. This is a nostalgia of being just one of my favorite games since I was a kid. So, and it's also just that good of a game that it makes it this high on my list. Alright, so this game might be the single biggest shocker for people who don't follow the channel. But for people who do follow the channel, you know this game is going to be somewhere. And that is Hot Shot World Invitational. For those of you who follow the channel, you know I am a huge Hot Shots fan. I stuck by this franchise since I was a kid, and I will continue to stick by it. In my opinion, the greatest golf games of all time belong to this franchise. And in my opinion, this is the pinnacle of the franchise, which is neat that it happens to end up on the PS Vita, so it gives me a lot of replayability to go back to my PS Vita. So for those of you who don't know about these games are kind of a mix of arcadey and simulation golf. So it has like the power meter, like even in a Tiger Woods game, where it'd be you press X, you go to the power that you want, it'll come back, and the closest you land to the middle of the tee is the more accurate you go. So if you land too far to the right, you'll slice it, left you'll hook it, depending on the side of club you choose. But what this game does is it blends slight tweaks to it that make it a little more arcadey and a little more approachable for everybody. One thing it does is adds power mechanics, so you can, for 10 shots out of say your 9-hole courses, you can extend the power or range of a single shot. You have a super boost on your spins, where if you time it right and have a character good enough with spins, you can basically cause it to land and then shoot backwards with fire. You can land these shots where it hits a flagpole and it will rise up or rise down and then instantly go in the hole. So it just adds those slight variations that make it a little more arcadey. It's also a little more forgiving on the winds and weather. It still definitely affects the gameplay, and that's where it adds that simulation aspect to it, but it's a little more forgiving than a PGA game or a Tiger Woods game. As I said, it is a mix of simulation, so the gameplay is partially and pretty realistic for a golfing game. It takes into account like how's the ball lying, so if it's on slightly an angle to the left or right, it will go that direction slightly, so you have to adjust where you're aiming. The wind takes into account of it, the weather, so if it's wet your ball will roll more, but it will go lower, it won't go as high. So there's a bunch of different effects that if you're a golfer or if you just appreciate watching golf, you'll understand that those mechanics make its way into the game, which is really cool. It also has a great art style and music. It's a very light, upbeat tone. There's a bunch of different characters that each have their own kind of unique personality or unique trait. So this is the Australian girl who has an Aussie accent and has like a cowgirl hat and has her own little vibe. Each of them have their own little costumes that you can unlock through the shop. There's a ton of unlockables through the game. There's so many different variety of clubs and balls and characters to unlock. Each character has levels you can level up, which each level you get allows them to have more power shots. It has a great kind of arcadey story mode. It doesn't really have a story per se, but it's kind of like an arcade ladder where you go up across all these different challenges, and at the end of each bracket of challenges, you have to win a certain amount of them to unlock the next boss battle. You'll face a new character, unlock them, go, rinse, repeat, unlock them, keep on going. It has a great sense of progression, and it has a great start to finish in terms of the difficulty. So the start is very easy, the tournament's a little more forgiving, and the maps are really just smooth and great to learn mechanics on. Then you go up a tier, it gets slowly harder and harder and harder until the later maps are really punishing and really difficult. And what separates this game from other Hot Shots games is very minor. One, I think the maps in these games are fantastic. I might give my favorite maps to the PSP one, but this game has a great selection of maps. For me, it's the shot mechanics. So in this game they introduced a bunch of different ways to shoot the ball. So this one actually has my favorite one in it, where instead of the bar that goes in and out and you have to like line it up, it's a circle. So it'll start off as a circle like this. It will expand for its power. So say you want full power, you'll hit it at the top. And then what you want to do is hit it when it goes back to that circle before it fully closes. And that will be your kind of timing on the tee. I find that a lot easier to hit for me. And it's also just, I just prefer it, to be honest. It's really minor, but that's what sets it comparative compared to other golf games out there. There's not a whole lot to compare them on. But overall, just a fantastic game. Really one of the games I always go back to my Vita for. So definitely worthy of a spot on this list. Alright, so next up is I think the only Switch game to actually make this list in terms of the total 100. And that is Fire Emblem Three Houses. So this is actually my introduction to a traditional Fire Emblem game. The first Fire Emblem game I actually played, besides the phone one, is Warriors. on the Switch as well. So I really kind of knew what I was getting into because of the phone game, but I didn't really know what I was getting into in terms of the extra stuff besides the combat for a Fire Emblem game, and I was really glad I picked it up. This is actually a game my brother introduced me to, so shout out to him. For those of you who don't know about these games, these are grid-based style JRPGs. You play as this mercenary that basically saves 3 royal kids that work at this academy or school, or are enrolled in technically this academy or school. They happen to be missing a professor slot, so you fill that slot. You take over one of the 3 teams or classes, which are led by one of these 3 leader kids that you saved. Basically, they become your main homeroom and your main team that you're using for all these battles. It follows a grid-based style where there's kind of a rock paper scissors mechanic where swords beat axes, axes do better against spears, spears do better against swords. There's also magic that does better against armor units, and bows that do better against flying units. There's a lot of different mechanics to it. What this game does so well is each battle is kind of like a puzzle. So it's not just you go in like other turn-based games that aren't grid-based and you just press the same combo back and forth, back and forth, back and forth till you kill the guy eventually. You kind of got to space your units out and throw your tanky units up front. You have your archers and mages behind with your healers protected, and kind of slowly encroach on enemies. And really, there's a lot of thought and procedures that go into completing a map, especially on the higher difficulties. And especially with the deep class system in this, you can slowly pick to level up each character towards whatever really weapon you want, and create them into this own specific class, and then have that unit that you've created and specialize them in on the battlefield and use them in whatever way you see fit. So you can kind of create your own army and playstyle that you'll enjoy playing through. Besides the combat, which I really enjoy, what really drawn me to this game, and the reason why I've played this game through 3 times and I'm on my 4th playthrough at the moment, is the story and the characters, specifically the characters. I've never played a Fire Emblem game, so one thing I've really enjoyed about Three Houses is the support conversations and the depth that all the characters have. So for each character, they have support conversations that'll take place with basically every character out of their main class. And then say you get to your 2nd and 3rd playthrough, or even on your 1st, it's more used in your 2nd and 3rd or 4th playthrough. You can take other students besides the class leader or their 2nd in command onto your team and integrate them into your class, and then they can have conversation loops with people from different classes. You can also get other teachers or other side characters that you run into to join the class as well to help out, and they have their own support conversations with specific people from your team. So seeing just how all of these characters that you grow to love, how they interact with each other, is fantastic to see. And honestly, one of my favorite parts about these games is after beating a map, after having a lot of fun, spending like 45 minutes on a map, because they are really fleshed out and really well designed maps, so they're a challenge and they're a good amount of time to get through. Going back to the hub world and being able to see what support conversations have come up and watching these little interactions, like going through all those interactions for the first time, was fantastic to see. And even though there's only 3 of them, they show a lot of growth of the characters and add those more dimensions to the characters that you don't get to see just by talking to them occasionally. Especially when it's 2 characters that aren't your main character interacting, I find those ones ended up being my favorite. Shout out to Ferdinand, that's my boy, my favorite. Also, they add a little more depth with the romance options. So even the replayability of going through all these support conversations, there's replayability of going through all the different romance options. So you have all the romance options for your specific character, and then also you can play kind of a matchmaker where you take all the people that are on your team, you try to level them up and have them work together a lot and have them be supported together. And if you level up 2 people that have to have a romantic or secret ending for the very end of the game, it will give you a little blurb or like a little paragraph or two of what happened in their history, being together type thing. So it adds that little more depth and replayability. And at the end of each playthrough, I always really enjoyed the combination of people and how their stories worked out and how my character worked out with whoever my love interest was for that playthrough. It just really added that element to the game that I was really enjoying. It really touched on my favorite thing about RPGs when they're done well, is the characters. Characters for me make or break an RPG. If I really enjoy the characters, like a Dragon Age game, Mass Effect, even something like Skyrim or Fallout, I really enjoy the characters that you interact with. It will hold me and hook me, like just dig in there, and I'll really want to see all the different outcomes and elements I can do with these characters. For those reasons alone, this game ranks this high on the list. This is just one of those games, no nostalgia, just pure, this game's fun. I really enjoy this game, and I spent a ton of time playing this game, and it's one of the only games that I've gone through and put this much hours in. To beat it 3 times on just different playthroughs to see how different characters interact with each other. So for that reason, it makes this high on my list. Alright, so last up, at number 11, we have Fallout New Vegas. For those of you who don't know about these games, the Fallout games are post-apocalyptic first-person shooters that you can play third-person RPGs that are made by Bethesda. So for those of you who don't know about the Fallout games, it's a post-apocalyptic game, so basically a bunch of nukes went off and everywhere is decimated and full of creatures that have been mutated due to the nuclear fallout. In this one, you play as a courier who basically gets double-crossed by a client, is left for dead, and then you wake up, the heck happened? Alright, let's go get revenge real quick. What this game does really well is you go into an area or a town. It will have its own like side mission or main mission story. You'll go through, deal with a bunch of unique dilemmas or choices you have to make that have different optional endings. You'll deal with a bunch of different characters and personality types, go through, do their little interesting story, go to the next area, rinse, repeat, and it has this great system where, say you help out one faction that's a rival to another, you'll gain fame for that one faction, and then you'll gain notoriety for the other. So the other one will try to shoot you and kill you on sight, the other one will say the other team's trying to shoot you, but you're near one of the others, will actually help you kill the other ones. There's a companion system where you can have one companion at a time, possibly 2. I think it's 1. It might be 2, but I'm pretty sure it's 1 companion at a time, which they give their each unique perks and also have their own unique storyline as well. And overall, the story, the amount of quests, and the characters that you run into are super interesting, will keep you hooked. And what ties it all together is the atmosphere of these games. It's like a post-apocalyptic setting. It has a bunch of, I guess, back in the day music, a bunch of early music that you would find in like old Western movies. And it kind of nails that atmosphere of combining the future tech and weapons of modern day society mixed in with the genre and classical elements and apparel environments of like more olden day, like 60s and 50s era. So it's really that combination of those two that's create this atmosphere that Fallout is really famous for. Also, the music in this game is fantastic, and I can't really describe it too well, but it's one of those games that you can just walk around, have this fantastic music playing, and going through this wasteland, and just go for a stroll, find the nearest town, start doing some quests, go for a stroll, and just be enjoying even the walking simulator portions of the game, just because it's the setting and the atmosphere is so good with the music design and all that it just makes everything feel fun. Everything feels cool. You feel like a badass with the entire thing. You have your own created character, which you have so many different stats that you can level up. You can level up these specific ones that are number-based values that allow you to unlock different things. So say you level up your first aid to, 60 or something like that. In a certain quest line, say somebody gets injured, you can heal them and they'll give you a bonus or an optional way to complete a certain quest. You can level up your lockpick. So say there's a certain quest that you need to break into a certain vault to get a certain bit of information. You need to wait till you can get that lockpick for your thing in order to get into it. There's usually a couple different ways to tackle an objective, but having this custom character that you made with a bunch of different options of how you approach stuff is fantastic. For me, I always love going to speech builds where you level up your speech fully, and all the different intelligence stuff that would come with the different checks for speech checks, and basically you talk your way out of everything, and it's a fun way to approach the game for me personally. And overall, this is one of those ones, it has a little nostalgia, and the fact that from Blockbuster I rented this, and I enjoyed the game. This was back when I was a COD kid, like pure COD kid, and I was like, oh, this is cool, it's got some shooting mechanics, I like that there's a little story to it. Leveling up my little character and adding stats is a lot of fun, but I was like, alright, this is good, you know, I'll buy this when I can get it. So I bought it for like, I think it was like 17 bucks, 20 bucks or something like that, and I thought it was just going to be a little fun playthrough. Turns out it was this long adventure that I was signing up for that I enjoyed every second of. Alright, so there you have it. That is my next episode of my top 100 games of all time, numbers 20 to 11. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know I talked a little bit more about each game than the other ones, but I really wanted to expand on and touch on these games a little more, because we're getting up to the point where these games usually mean a little more to me in terms of shaping me as a gamer. I hope you find that interesting as well. Also, just discussing the game themselves and why they're so good. If you did, please let me know in the comments or by liking the video. So I will continue that for my next top 10, which is 10 to 1. So that'll be my final episode of this. So as always, thanks for watching, and remember, everybody has some nerdiness at their core.